Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the Bitcoin miners and how the Bitcoin miners ironically seem to be pumping while the rest of crypto is dumping. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so first one we're going to take a look at is Mara here. As you guys can see, previous resistance in August of 2022 and July of 2023 was roughly about that $18.50 to $20-ish level that we had previously. We did kind of come down below it a couple of times down here. As you guys can see, there was like a couple of fake outs with these downside wicks, which indicates bullish pressure. And we pretty much bounced off of kind of roughly about this area here. So you can see these candle tops here pretty much held as support. It's not really uncommon for whales or smart money to kind of do sly little moves, sneaky little moves like that. So don't be surprised if you see something like that. Like if a support or resistance doesn't play out exactly as expected, that is because there typically is probably somebody in the background pulling some interesting moves that probably none of us would suspect. So the other level of support here, as you guys can see, is this bottom trend line, which again, this is pretty much more or less a channel, or I guess we could more accurately call this some kind of rising broadening wedge, which theoretically is a bearish pattern. But again, I mean, this thing could just extend out forever. The wedge could just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then Mara trades within it for God knows how long before seeing downside. And again, with price patterns, there is statistically, dependent on the pattern, there's a higher probability of something happening. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to happen. I have seen rising wedges that actually are supposed to break down based on probability. They actually went up and broke up out of the wedge. So occasionally it does happen. It's just kind of a lower probability scenario. But this previous resistance, as you guys can see here, is now turned into support. So again, that's going to be roughly about $18 to $20. We have a support trend line down here to hold the price up as well. So that's all well and good. And then we have this inverse head and shoulders pattern, which is not so obvious, but it is there. Again, the target for that is going to be, let's see if I'm measuring this right. Yeah, that's pretty much accurate. So from the breakout point, you guys can see it's pretty high up there. So it's about $26.80, $27. So pretty good price there. The resistance above head is going to be about 29 to 33. Keep in mind, if the price just squeezes straight up, it could go as high as 41 before getting rejected. The resistance here is just kind of a temporary stopping point, in my opinion, before these things do go higher. Based on the cycle timing, it should be roughly about the end of the year is what we're looking at, because that's when Bitcoin and anything Bitcoin related should theoretically go to new all-time highs. So I'll give you guys the measurement on this. So pretty much from the current price to, let's just say, to this resistance up here, 64%. If we get another swing up to this wick high, 70%. And then let's just say we go all the way up to the trend line. You guys can see it's a massive 113% move. In my opinion, Mara looks pretty much like a steal right now. I mean, on the weeklies, it's as good as it's going to get. I mean, in terms of the current price, I mean, the RSI is above the break-even level in the bull zone still. The MACD is still in the bull zone. We have not seen the histogram turn a deeper red and keep going down, kind of like, if I show you guys like back here, it consistently went down. The red bars got bigger. That's kind of an indication of accelerating bearish momentum, but we're seeing the opposite here. So the dark shade of red is turning a lighter shade, and the volume bars are getting smaller. So that indicates potentially bullishness coming up. Again, it's sitting above the EMAs, sitting at support, sitting above the trend line. It's kind of been bobbing around in this general roughly about $16 to $20-ish level for some time. I would kind of see this, in my opinion, as an accumulation zone. Again, it's a good buying opportunity. We do have some, but you guys can do what you want to with that. So CLSK, this is the next one that we also have a lot of. We actually have 300 shares of this, a little bit more expensive than we'd like, but that's when we were first trying out options. Not every trade is going to be perfect. Some trades are going to be less than perfect. We don't have a perfect track record, but vast majority of the time we are right. So, you can see even though we have had this selling off of the RSI here and also the MACD, while the price was seemingly simultaneously going up, the price then did pull back, so all of the indicators were kind of lined up. And we've pretty much just been sitting in this channel and writing the EMAs. So this, in my opinion, is what I would refer to as a pullback in time. This looks very much like a pullback in time. So we get massively overextended from the EMAs, get rejected off of a key resistance area, and then just kind of bob up and down in between this channel along the EMAs until eventually it chops sideways for long enough, the indicators reset enough to where a squeeze eventually does happen. This thing just rips straight out of this. What looks to be like maybe some kind of bull flag that we're in. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bull flag, but that's kind of what it looks like to me. And not every bull flag is going to be perfect looking, but as you guys can see, it measures up nicely with the previous resistance up here, 3640, along with that trend line and the zone. So it does appear to be lining up nicely. Again, we are in a rising broadening wedge, but keep in mind the price could bounce around in this thing for a very long time. As a matter of fact, if I go over to the SPX, I'll show you guys this right now so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I go back to 2020 and 2021, you guys can see that the price of the SPX was in a massive, huge rising wedge, basically from the pandemic lows all the way until January of 2022 before this thing snapped. So it spent 2 years inside of a massive macro rising wedge before breaking down. Okay. So I just point this out to y'all just to let you know that there is a possibility that the rising wedge could just keep on expanding and we don't actually get a breakdown for a very long time. That's a possibility. It could happen. So now going back to the charts, I do want to point out that it does appear we're getting some kind of golden cross here on the RSI. Get rid of this so you can see it. It's really hard to tell, but you guys can see that we are getting a golden cross. We haven't had one of these in a while. Last time we had the death cross, this thing pulled back from 25 all the way down to 14. It's a pretty nasty drop, not going to lie. So in terms of support, we're pretty much looking like, I would say roughly about the base of this flag and also the trend line. So somewhere around 14 to 15-ish dollars is going to be the support level. I don't think it comes back down to the zone because, again, we have this flag and this trend line kind of holding its support. It could come back down into the zone, roughly about 13 to 14 bucks, but I would say that's pretty low probability. So the target we're looking for here is roughly immediately 2130 to 2380. Again, the flag pattern target's going to be about 36 and a half bucks. And of course, the broadening wedge kind of lines up with this resistance up here, which in time would be roughly about 36.50 to 42.50. So even from the current price to the top of this range, it's a pretty big move. So 20% up to the flag target, 84%, and then all the way up to the top of the all-time high resistance. Well, it's actually not all-time high, but it's the most recent all-time high resistance, 170%. So you guys can see this was pretty much the top for the last bull market, which is a pretty good price considering CLSK at the bottom of the bear market was $1.70. Is that crazy or what? But at one point in time, CLSK back in 2018 was valued at $150 a share. So anything could happen. The spot Bitcoin ETFs are in play, so do keep that in mind in terms of price appreciation. There's no telling just how high this thing could go. So Riot, right off the bat, I can tell you guys this thing looks like an absolute buy. CLSK, I think, has already had its move. The time to pick it up would have been back here. If you want to get in at a better price, maybe throw on like a cash secured put. That's not financial advice, but if you do that, you could potentially get an entry with some premium at a lower price if that's what you're looking to do. Unless you want to sit around and wait for it. I mean, you could always do that. Wait for the price to drop. So Riot, in my opinion, is a steal at the current price that it's at. It's not perfectly in the zone, but it's pretty close. So we got a breakout, it appears, of this inverse head and shoulders pattern. Again, the target's going to be all the way up here at 1650. That would not shock me because, again, the previous swing high back here during July of 2023 was over $20. So massive, massive increase from the current price, roughly about a 2x. So the support's between $7.60 to $10. I don't see it coming down that low unless Bitcoin and altcoins just completely just take a dump and capitulate massively, like 30-40%. If that happens, then yeah, theoretically, the Bitcoin miners, the Grayscale Trust, all of it, all the crypto-related stuff could dump heavily. But again, I don't see that happening. So the move up to the inverse head and shoulders target would be about 54%. And again, all the way back up to this swing high back here from last year, you'd be looking at a massive 93% gain. HUD 8, this thing is finally starting to move, and it is moving. So we got to break out of this falling wedge, or I forget what the other term for it is, but we'll just call it a falling wedge. So this is a bullish pattern. As you guys can see, it does look very bullish. We had a confirmation candle and a follow-up candle breakout above the top trend line. The EMAs are starting to converge bullish. We are getting green on the histogram of the MACD. The RSI is entering the bull zone, so everything looks good. Again, the previous swing target is all the way up here at 1830, and of course the wedge target would be the top of the wedge, so you're looking at about $23 on that. In terms of HUD 8, I would still say this thing is actually quite cheap, if I'm being honest. So 54% move up to the first target, 91% move up to the second target. Could it pull back to within this wedge? Yeah, that's possible, but we'll have to keep a look out on it on the coming weeks. Considering this thing hasn't had the golden cross yet, not yet. But you guys can see a very similar setup here where it chopped sideways along support and then eventually just took off to the upside. I would say likely this thing is actually going to get a triple golden cross, and HUD 8 is going to be moving up and smash into the upside. That's just my opinion. So CIFR, if you guys are looking to take profits, if that's what you want to do, or maybe perhaps throw on a covered call to get out of your position at a massive gain with some premiums, just my opinion, not financial advice, but now would be the time to do it. Every time it's got into this area in the zone, it's had a massive sell-off, as you guys can see. Once, boom, twice, boom, 3 times, boom. And then now the question is it going to reject again? So if it gets rejected, it might come back down to roughly about 375. Again, whether you guys want to lock in profits or not, that's up to you, but 375 would be the pullback zone. And again, the resistance is going to be between 490 to 570. If you waited for a pullback and then swung it all the way up to this previous high up here, it's about a 52% move. So BTBT, this thing's looking very bullish. It does look like it's about to have a golden cross. Last time we had one of those on the EMAs was Christmas of last year, essentially, and it went from 250 all the way up to a massive 5.25. So huge increase. We did get a bullish confirmation out of the falling wedge here. So I'd say EMAs are going to be roughly about where support's going to be at this point. It will likely at some point probably pull back and retest, just like right here, before having another pop to the upside. That's normal when it comes to the EMAs. That's actually expected. That's one of the tools that we use when we actually swing trade stocks, not with options, but the actual stocks on the market. So from the current price to the swing high up here is an 89% move. If you wanted to wait for a slight pullback and maybe DCA down, you would then be looking at maybe 108% if you manage to get your cost basis at about $2.50. So BITF, this one is in the sell zone. Personally, I would not touch this. It does look bullish. So we got 2 golden crosses here. The EMAs are having golden crosses as well, so that's all good and great. And last time it happened, it did pump, but it pumped from way down here at $1.50. The golden cross is now happening at $2. So one of two scenarios play out here. It either busts through this resistance and goes up to this price, which again is roughly about $9.20. It could stop maybe even here at roughly about $7.50. That's a possibility. But again, like I said, I don't expect that to happen until about Bitcoin's appointed time to start smashing to the moon, which is November, December of this year. Or it could do like it did the last 2 times and get a rejection and come back down to support, which again is going to be $2 to $1.50. Whatever the case, whether you're bullish or bearish on this, that's up for you to decide. I'm just pointing out the risk and reward here. So if we do get a pullback and it does come back to support, again, that's going to be about $2, and the swing would be about 96%, versus if this thing busts out of the resistance, comes back and tests, let's say it tests at $3, which seems like a likely number to test at, the move would be huge. It'd be 215%, and that does not include price discovery. So once again, just to reiterate, I think Mars is steel right now. It's in the perfect setup. Everything looks bullish here for a possible pump to the upside. This is the perfect entry to get in my opinion. As a matter of fact, if I show you guys the portfolio here, you guys can see that we do actually have a put on MAR currently that could potentially get filled at 1850, which again, pretty much would be right just above the EMAs. So it's not exactly perfect on the entry level, but again, it's kind of been bobbing around in this area a lot. So got to give it a little bit of room to breathe. But again, in my opinion, wrong chart. So bobbing around in this area a lot. And again, 1850 is kind of at support here. So maybe we do or don't get filled. Either way, we get the premium. But again, if it pops, we want to be in it. So you guys can do what you want to with that. CLSK has already had its move, in my opinion. I'd just throw in a cash secured put for this one or buy shares straight off the market because our cost base is $23.50. So it would reduce it for us. But for you, maybe it's a different story. But again, I'd be wanting to buy down here somewhere. I would not touch this right now. Riot, in my opinion, is a great place to buy. It's perfectly, looks like it's about ready to squeeze out of the EMA is bullish, and it's also at support. HUT 8 is still an early buy, in my opinion. It's not the perfect time to buy. Perfect time to buy was back in this area, but still does look quite cheap compared to its targets. CIFR, I would not touch this thing with a 10-foot pole right now. The only thing I would do on this would maybe be throwing on some cash secured puts for a pullback or waiting for the pullback to get in with cash in the markets with a market order or maybe a limit order. BTBT, I mean, this one's still relatively cheap. I would at least wait for a pullback into the EMAs just to kind of reduce the risk. BITF, again, same thing as CIFR. I would not touch this. If I was going to do this, I would do a cash secured put. So anyways, this is the Bitcoin Miners. Hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.